What do a vanished Egyptian queen, a medieval warrior, and a French-born English consort all have in common? Across 3 different worlds and 3 different centuries, Nefertiti, Brunhild of Austrasia, and Margaret of Anjou bent history to their will, and they all paid a steep price for it. Tonight we're following their footprints through sand, steel, and thrones to uncover how these extraordinary women challenged kings, defied tradition, and left behind legacies their enemies tried desperately to erase. And you'll want to stay to the end, because the final thread that ties all of them together might just change how you read every royal story you've ever heard. Let's travel back to ancient Egypt. In the 14th century BCE, the name Nefertiti brings to mind a legendary face, carved in limestone, the pinnacle of ancient beauty. But she was so much more than that. She was the co-architect of a religious earthquake. Alongside her husband, Pharaoh Akhenaten, she championed the worship of a single solar deity, the Aten, and moved the entire royal court to a brand new, purpose-built capital at Amarna. Suddenly, the old ways crumbled. Temples to the traditional gods were closed. Their priests lost their power. The old gods fell silent. Even art itself was transformed, giving way to a strange new style. Elongated forms, shockingly intimate family scenes, a completely new visual language of power. But was Nefertiti just a supportive consort, following her husband's lead? The evidence suggests something much bolder. In ancient inscriptions, her name appears with full royal epithets. Some scholars argue she ruled as co-regent, and equal to her husband. Others believe she may have later reigned alone under a different throne name after Akhenaten's death. And then, she disappears from the record, just gone. No clear account of her death, no confirmed tomb, just an unnerving silence that echoes across millennia. And yet, her legacy slips through the cracks of time. There's the famous bust discovered by chance in 1912, which made her an icon. There are the remnants of the reforms that shook an entire empire to its core. And there is the question that history still can't definitively answer. Just how much of that revolution was hers? While Nefertiti's power was spiritual and symbolic, our next queen wielded hers with iron and stone, on muddy battlefields and in smoky council chambers. Welcome to Merovingian Gaul in the late 6th and early 7th centuries. Brunhild begins her life as a Visigothic princess, married into the Frankish royal family to become a queen. But when assassinations, bitter betrayals, and brutal civil wars start to rip the realm apart, she doesn't retreat into the shadows. She governs. For decades, she forges alliances, oversees the construction of roads and monasteries, and serves as the unwavering regent for her sons and grandsons. She constantly outmaneuvers power-hungry nobles who dismiss her as a mere woman, and defies rival kings who fear her intellect and influence. Her bitter, decades-long rivalry with another formidable queen, Fredegund, turns into one of the most ruthless and personal power struggles of the era. Brunhild survives exile, endless plots, and battle after battle, always fighting her way back to the center of power. Until, finally, the tide turns against her for good. In the year 613, her enemies capture the aging queen. The sentence is beyond brutal. She is subjected to public humiliation and then executed, an order given by King Clothar II, the son of her lifelong rival. The chroniclers of the time, who were mostly male and deeply hostile to her authority, painted her as a monster, a manipulative foreign witch. Yet her legend refused to die. Elements of her incredible story echoed down through the centuries, finding their way into medieval epics like the Nibelungenlied, the warrior queen who fought the world and refused to bow, even in defeat. From the dark forests of medieval Europe, we now jump forward to the Wars of the Roses, both white and red, in a kingdom at war with itself. We arrive in 15th century England. Margaret of Anjou, a determined and intelligent French noblewoman, marries King Henry VI, a pious but deeply troubled ruler plagued by bouts of severe mental illness and chronic weakness. As the crown teeters on the verge of collapse, Margaret steps forward. She becomes the de facto leader of the Lancastrian cause. She negotiates critical alliances with Scotland and France. She raises armies to fight for her husband's throne. and she becomes the relentless driving strategist behind the House of Lancaster, and for a time she succeeds. Victories come like the one at Wakefield, and then the dramatic recapture of King Henry himself at the Second Battle of St. Albans. But the wheel of fortune is always turning. The rival Yorkists eventually seize power, and Edward IV wears the crown. Years later, a brief, miraculous restoration returns Henry to the throne, and then, catastrophe. In 1471, at the Battle of Tewkesbury, the Lancastrian cause is crushed. Margaret's only son and heir, Edward of Westminster, is killed on the battlefield. Her husband, Henry VI, dies soon after in the Tower of London. The queen who gambled everything is imprisoned, ransomed by the King of France, and finally exiled, returning to her home country a broken woman. To her enemies, she was the she-wolf of France, a foreign schemer who usurped her husband's authority. To her allies, she was a courageous commander who refused to surrender, even when all was lost. To history, she remains the woman who carried the weight of a kingdom's war on her shoulders. So, what unites them? 3 crowns, 3 centuries, 3 different worlds, and yet, they all face the same storm. Each of these women confronted an existential crisis. Nefertiti faced a religious revolution, Brunhild a fractured kingdom in a constant state of civil war, and Margaret a total dynastic collapse. Each of them stepped far beyond the acceptable boundaries of royal womanhood for their time. They weren't just accompanying power, they were actively exercising it, making decisions, leading factions, and shaping policy. And crucially, each of them was targeted by propaganda or historical silence. Nefertiti vanishes from the official record at the very moment of her greatest potential influence. Brunhild's story is told almost exclusively by her enemies, who needed to justify her brutal death by portraying her as a villain. And Margaret is condemned by rival Yorkist chroniclers who needed a scapegoat to legitimize their own victory. And yet, despite the efforts to erase or demonize them, the signatures of their leadership endure. The radical policies they shaped, the powerful networks they built, and the incredible risks they took. Their power was never an accident. It was a conscious decision. They chose to rule. So which of these queens fascinates you the most? Nefertiti, whose artistic and spiritual revolution still glows like the sun god Aten in shattered temples. Brunhild, whose iron will bend kingdoms for half a century. Or Margaret of Anjou, the lioness who dared to lead armies into battle. And who else should we cover? Is there another woman from history who faced down war, exile, or erasure that you want to hear about? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more untold stories from the forgotten corners of history, please like this video and subscribe. The past isn't just what's remembered, it's what we choose to see. Thanks for watching.